the future. That's why today we launch this new plan, this new purpose, this new partnership, with 5 priorities we can unite behind, 5 steps we can take together to begin our walk towards a Britain with its future back. Step 1, we'll get Britain building again. We'll take on the blockers that hold a veto over British aspiration. Rip out the red tape in our planning system that stops you building the future Britain needs. Take the tough decisions that will get the infrastructure you need. The warehouses, grid connections, roads, tunnels, labs, built more quickly and at a better price. We will also build 1.5 million new homes for your workers. And with that, a rich prize for your business, a path to a stronger skills base, a happier workforce, more dynamism, more demand, more growth. Step 2, we'll kickstart a skills revolution, because a future must be trained as well as built. Now, you told us the system doesn't work. There's not enough coordination, too much chasing the ball, nobody thinking about the skills we need tomorrow. And we've listened. That's why we'll set up a new national body, Skills England. You told us the apprenticeship levy is too inflexible, won't let you train your own workforce in the way that you need. And we listened. That's why we'll create a more flexible growth and skills levy instead. But as with any partnership, there is also challenge. Because for years I've heard businesses complain about the skills system, about the quality of the courses at their local colleges. So we're giving you the tools to do something about it. That's what our technical excellent colleges are all about. So I say in all seriousness, get into them, help design the courses, drive up the standards, and in doing so, help ground our education system more firmly, not just in young people's aspirations, not just in the needs of your business, but also in the pride, the pull of the badge on the shirt, the ambition you feel when building a lasting legacy for your own community. Step 3, we'll make work pay. 0-hour contracts scrapped. Fire and rehire finished. A genuine living wage. And I want to be crystal clear about this. We are going to level up workers' rights in a way that's not been attempted for decades. And that may not please everyone in the room or the wider business community. But nobody can doubt that our labour market is at the heart of our challenges on productivity. A clear reason why the wealth we create fails to generate economic security. That's not just an argument about social justice. It's also about growth. Because the growth we need cannot come from driving down the terms and conditions of the British people. That is not a pathway to sustained productivity improvement. In fact, if anything, it distorts our economy with perverse incentives on things like investment in technology. I accept this may be a challenge for some businesses, but we will work with you at every stage of rolling our reforms out, and we will back you with a different deal. We will cut NHS waiting lists to make your workforce healthier. We will put a plan in place to make it more highly skilled. We will provide better mental health access, more affordable housing. This is a different model, pro-worker and pro-business. Step 4, we'll back you with the tools to transform the role of investment in our economy. A new industrial strategy that can maximise our distinctive strengths. Life sciences, digital technology, financial services, the creative industries, car manufacturing, clean power. A new national wealth fund ready to work hand in glove with you to rebuild our country, with public investment crowding in many multiples of private investment, sharing both risk and reward by giving the British people a stake. And finally, step 5. In some ways, the most important step of all, the foundation it all rests upon, a commitment to always put economic stability first. Now, Rachel spelt this out very clearly this morning. We cannot and we will not allow public spending needs, however important, to threaten the stability of our finances. We have seen where that leads under this government with total clarity. It is the definition of a false economy, and working people pay the price. But stability, as you've told us time and time again, is not just an exercise in damage control, it's also an opportunity. I go back to what I said a few moments ago. Our job is to provide you with the conditions to succeed. And when you invest in your business, you invest in this country. So we want a competitive tax regime for business investment. That's why we've backed permanent full expensing. But we also know that this regime needs to be stable. In this Parliament alone, we've had a new headline corporation tax in 2021, 2022 twice, and then in 2023, yet more changes to the regime with the end of the super deduction. In fact, all told, there have been 26 changes to corporation tax since 2019. I think that's more changes than Chancellors, although it's hard to keep up. I was at an event the other day where the CEOs were actually vying as to who'd had the most changes of minister over the last few years. But seriously, you know this chaos has a cost. You know that instability has a chilling effect on business investment. Time and again, you tell me it's the chopping and the changing, the sticking plaster politics, the growing concern that our government will rip up its international commitments that's holding back investment in our country. So that's why we've committed today to a stable corporation tax rate. No changes. And so, for the whole of the next Parliament, with Labour, you will know exactly the return on your investment in this country. Because at the end of the day, when the big questions that echo around rooms like this are raised, where does our money go? Where do our jobs go? Where does our investment in a better future go? I want the answer that comes back to be a resounding, why not Britain? A country building again, growing again, believing again that hard work will be rewarded, aspiration will be backed, working people can be successful, because we have a long-term plan to get Britain's future back. A partnership for growth. British business driving our country forward with a Labour Party on your side, walking together with you towards a decade of national renewal. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think...
Was Keir Starmer talking to business leaders in London, following on from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who spoke to them earlier, setting out Labour's plans for business, get Britain building again, kickstart skills revolution, make work pay, back with tools in the economy and a commitment to put economic stability first, saying that the Labour is the party on your side to the business community and that a decade of national renewal is what is needed. He may be taking questions from the audience, so we may just listen back in. We're not going to take them. We can't hear them in any way, but there we have Keir Starmer talking in London today. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, will AI be the future of fair recruitment or potentially unfair dismissal? Stay tuned to find out.
They locked me up for 3.5 years and were prepared to throw away the key. And within a couple of seconds, there were a number of armed security.
An autism patient's dramatic escape from a secure psychiatric care unit sparks a major investigation.
I was petrified.
Follow Patient 11 wherever you get your podcasts.
It's always difficult at this time of year when you walk out on a train station, for example, it's freezing cold and you can't think forward. But we've been there before. A couple of years ago, 40.3 was the top, and everybody else 37, 38. So, look, it's a silent killer. That's what this committee. Simply because when these things are reported, they're not reported you died of when people die of of heat. It's not reported you die of heat. It's reported you die of a stroke or a heart attack or other symptoms that go with hot weather. And hot weather does kill as much as cold weather kills. So weather is massively underestimated. And I'm really glad that this committee have got some. Whether they've got teeth is another matter, but at least they brought it to the attention. And also the fact that you are actually reporting it on Sky News, because, it's almost like a silent story. It doesn't get out there. It doesn't resonate. I think they've got to put this into schools, colleges and the broader spectrum of society to make them understand, make people understand that weather per se, whether we're talking storms, we're talking cold, hot, understand that when you see these extremes of temperature, these extremes of weather, that we have to act accordingly. So what we do, I could be here for a day and a half, but the point is we've got to move in that direction. So people have got the knowledge to help themselves first, help their families first. So a really easy one would be, for example, painting roofs white. Why? Because it reflects the heat in the summertime. When you get that excessive heat and you touch a white surface, it's very different than touching a black surface.
It's not an invitation, it's an ask to join us.
Let's just take you back to central London. Keir Starmer is speaking to business leaders.
Our country, I think business in return is entitled to say, OK, Keir, well, in which case, do you understand what's standing in the way, and are you prepared to do the hard yards of getting those barriers out of the way? Planning is one of the barriers that comes up, I think, at pretty well every discussion we ever have. That's whether it's an infrastructure project. We're really bad at infrastructure projects in this country. They always take too long. They go over budget. We're much slower than other countries, but also when it comes to building houses, etc. So we have to deal with what gets in the way. The first thing in the way, in many respects, is planning, and we've therefore got to reform planning. And we're really determined to do this tough stuff. I think there is stuff we can do about the national framework to start with. It has to be much clearer. The objectives has to be changed. It's to be made much less challengeability as we go down this road to make sure that we can get these infrastructure projects off the ground much more quickly. So yes, that means that we've got to take on some of the challenges along the way, those that will stand in the way of change. There are always going to be people who stand in the way of change. Whenever you try to change something, will be somebody who says, oh no, we've always done it this way, you can't change things. We've got to bulldoze through that, because I think otherwise we're never going to get the change that we need in this country. One of the formative conversations I had pretty early on, 2 or 3 years ago, was with someone about how quickly I could get a wind farm built onshore if we needed one to get to clean power by 2030. And I was told to build the wind farm would take 2 years, but you wouldn't be able to use it for 13. Because the grid would take time, the planning would take time, and be 13 years. We can't hit our targets if it takes 13 years to get a project that's 2 years to build to finalisation. So we've got to have a real determination here to push through on this. We will try and do some of the early stuff, by the way, without too much legislation, because I don't want to get bogged down. We've got we're going to inherit, I think, if we are privileged enough to come into power, a very broken economy, a broken set of institutions and public services. So we've got to hit the ground running. And so we will get on with it from day one. Thank you. But we do need to talk about the grid.
I look forward to it. So you said the magic words of government speak, which is industrial policy or industrial strategy. And there's the industrial strategy that's being practiced in the United States, which is throw a lot of money at something. But then there's the industrial strategy of China, which is a long-term view of where a country can have a first mover advantage to change the trajectory of investment and growth. So when you talk about industrial strategy, you threw out a number of sectors. But might you highlight the several where you think some of the greatest potential is for the economy to deliver sustained and meaningful growth?
Yeah, I mean, industrial strategy is hugely important. I think everybody in the room would agree with that. Almost every business leader I've spoken to has put on their list of things that need to change industrial strategy. And we're not in a good place at the moment. Theresa May did have an industrial strategy, which wasn't bad, actually. You will have all seen it and perhaps worked with it. I think I'm right in saying if you go to the government website now and go to the portal for industrial strategy, you will see the words archived. And that is it. There isn't one. It's gone off to the library forever. So we've got to build industrial strategy. We can't have a partnership without it. It needs to be given a sort of an infrastructure of its own. We need a council, I think, for the industrial strategy. It needs to be, I think, in law so that it doesn't come and go, as we've seen in the last few years. And I think we also need a version that is capable of doing the granular work sector by sector, because there will be different demands depending on the different sectors in which you are all working and you're all operating. So that's the framework. I think that's vital, by the way. I think it's much needed. I don't think the framework on itself gets you home on an industrial strategy, because it's about a mindset. It's about how do you actually work as partners. And so this industrial strategy, to take any sector, would be working with business to say, what's the journey that, or the pathway to the goal we're trying to achieve? And what are the pinch points? Where does the government need to do something? Is it early funding? Is it changing the skills? Is it making sure that there's a guaranteed purchase at this point on the process? Is it de-risking a bit of it? And there'll be different versions of this discussion going on, so that what government does is agile, not clunky, that where we're putting investment, whether it's in skills or money, into a project, we know why we're doing it, and we're putting it in the right point for business to say, that's the point you need to help us on the journey to allow us to complete the journey. So that's the extent to which, or the depth of industrial strategy as I see it. It's going to be a lot more intense, a lot more hard work, I think a lot more productive, but what we won't be having is an industrial council that meets every quarter with coffee and croissants. Everybody says the same thing as they said 3 months ago. It's duly noted, and we come back 3 months later for the same conversation. I've had too many of those discussions in my life, and I think probably all of you have as well. This is sleeves rolled up industrial strategy that I'm absolutely convinced from my discussions with businesses, with many people actually in this room, will be the thing that unlocks the capability of this country to move forward at pace.
Fantastic. That's a perfect segue to actually asking some members of the audience to ask their questions that are perhaps more industry specific. So first, Mike Archer from AstraZeneca. Great. Can somebody bring him a microphone?
Yes, thank you, Mike Archer from AstraZeneca. We in the sector were delighted to see the report that was published earlier this week by Peter and by Wes for our sector. I think one of the really critical areas in there is about medicines manufacturing. We've seen a real decline in the UK over the last 10 years or so, particularly in our exports and the amount of investment that's been made in this critical area, an area that can provide massive amounts of additional jobs, huge amounts of GVA for local places across the country, exports, and of course, really critically, resilience in terms of medicines access for the NHS. What are Labour's ambitions around expanding and improving UK medicines manufacturing, and what else can industry do to help you develop those plans?
Well, the first thing is we've got to recognise that life sciences is a very important sector already, and I think will be crucial as we go forward. I see it as one of the areas, one of the sectors, if you like, that can drive forward the sort of growth that we need. And it's great to see you, because I think last time we were together was in Macclesfield at your site up there, talking to some of your staff, and also recognising not just those that you directly employ, but all those that were feeding into the work that you were doing. And therefore, we do need a strategy. Pete and Wes were working on a strategy, very good report that we launched the other day. So we need a strategy. We need to, with you, work out what the challenges are as we go forward. And from our conversation, I took away a number of things. One is, and this will be across the room, I think, energy costs. That for AstraZeneca, and I'm sure others in the same boat, the high energy costs are a real inhibitor. Because there wasn't a strategy, there wasn't a way of working with government quickly enough, getting trials and research cleared so that we could be in the race where others are. And I think there were examples given to me of work that we could have done here, a race we could have won here, but we lost to another country because we didn't take decisions quickly enough. So I think there's a huge amount that we can do in relation to life science planning as well, for the premises that you need. So there's an example of an industrial strategy that is at the national level, but also has the flexibility to work with the sector in relation to the specific demands. But they were big takeaways from me from our meeting. And this is the great thing actually about coming out and talking to people in this room and businesses in their place of work, because reading a briefing in Whitehall is one thing. Going to where you're doing your business, understanding it properly, having those discussions in Macclesfield is much more impactful. And for me, it's a way of working. On the way back on the train or wherever I'm getting back, I mull over what people have said to me. What's the challenge there then for the government? What are the things that we need to do to change? But I think there's a lot. But the final thing I'd say, actually, just on this, because welcome views, in relation to, with the vaccine, we obviously had a task force that went very fast to achieving an outcome. Obviously, it was an important situation, clear outcome. But that sense of a task force approach that goes across government departments, so that you're not knocking on this door one day, another door the next day, and nearly always with somebody else behind the desk under this government, that we can create a more dynamic way of actually delivering in government, I think, would sit above the various things I've mentioned already. Thank you.
Fantastic. So next, Tina McKenzie from the Federation of Small Business. Tina, are you about? Oh,
Tina.
Yeah,
there
I'm here.
is. Great.
Thank you very much, Sir Keir, and I'd like to start by saying thank you for your team's engagement, Rachel and Johnny, with the Federation of Small Business over the last 12 months. It's been incredible. However, in saying that, and we've heard a lot today about for UK PLC. We've talked about corporation tax and full expenses, etc. Haven't had really anything concrete for the SMEs, and as you know, that's 5.5 million votes for you. Wondered if you consider making a commitment to the SMEs around the things that they're asking for, are re-looking at the VAT threshold, looking at the employment allowance. They're having it very tough at the moment. You've already done work on business rates and on late payments, but some sort of more of a commitment in line with what you've just done for the big businesses.
Well, let me start by a shout out for our small businesses, because they're in many senses the backbone of everything that we do in this country. Many millions of people involved, fantastic businesses. And, I've been to see some of these businesses, where, it could be 100 people with a business that's been established, doing fantastic, innovative stuff, driving our country forward. Massive contribution to the economy, of course, massive employer of people, and I think it is, you're absolutely right to challenge, to say we've always got to have that in our minds, and there are plenty of things in our plan on small business. Late payment is a really important commitment. What we do about business rates is a really important commitment. I think there is further we can go. I think a lot of small businesses feel they're shut out sometimes of procurement and access to contracts, and I think that is something that we could change as well. So I do think there's a lot we can do for our small businesses, because they're at the sharp end, and I always bear in mind with small businesses that very often those running the business are not just putting their personal money in, their own private wealth, they're putting a bit of their own soul in, and they're taking quite big risks with the businesses that they are running, and that's why I think it's important that we have a government that supports them. So thank you for the question, thank you for the challenge, and we'll continue to work with you in relation to small businesses. Thank you.
So next we're going to take you to the property side. So Melanie Leach from the British Property Federation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Keir, for your speech for today, for the clarity of the business partnership plan, and of course from the property sector for the focus on building. Property is a sector that directly contributes over £137 billion each year to the economy, but beyond that we underpin all economic activity, from the critical infrastructure of our logistics and warehousing to homes and offices of all shapes and forms, to business premises that support life sciences and other fast-growing sectors, to retail, hospitality and leisure. And we think and invest for the long term. So my question, we've touched on industrial strategy already, but my question is to ask whether you can say anything more about your own understanding of the importance of a national green industrial strategy. And the word green here is critical, I think, to a sector that accounts for 25% of the UK's carbon emissions and is working really hard and investing hugely in bringing that down and tackling that challenge. But a national green industrial strategy with clarity and consistency of purpose, policy and regulation, which we've heard about from your colleagues already today, to sectors such as real estate with billions of pounds more to invest, but choices about where to invest, and a backdrop of similar economic and social challenges, including building more homes, which is facing most countries across the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and also the framing of the question, which brings alive the significance of the issues that you've raised. And going to that, a central question within what you ask, the green transition, the transition that we are on, particularly in relation to energy, to renewables. This is a transition that we have to make. We know we have to make it. Other countries across the world are making that transition. And there are two ways of looking at this. One is that it's a huge obligation that somehow is imposed on all of us and will inhibit the way we run our businesses, the way we run our country. Or the alternative, which is the way I look at it, which is this is probably the single biggest opportunity that we've been presented with for decades in relation to the next generation of jobs, the technology of the future. And my concern at the moment is that the race towards the new jobs of transition is on. That race isn't about to start and we're sort of limbering up. The race is already happening, and under this government we're back in the changing room. And other countries are already getting ahead of us. So I think we need to run towards the challenge. The key things, or amongst the key things, are exactly what you had in the body of your question, which is clarity, certainty and a strategic approach. And what we've had with this government is chopping and changing in relation to the strategy for transition. That won't work. And you've got to have a plan that takes you past the transition to what happens next. And there are brilliant initiatives across the country in relation to transition. But if you have a government that swaps the minister involved every 5 minutes, that says one thing in relation to targets one day and another thing in relation to targets the next day, then that inhibits the investment that needs to come in and the work towards the transition that I think that we can make. So for me, this transition is a huge opportunity. Next generation of jobs, absolutely, and for many years to come. When it comes to energy, lower energy bills, because if we make this transition, the price will go down. We will not be so exposed internationally to tyrants like Putin, who's at the moment being able to put his boot on our throat. So there are huge opportunities in this, but we have to have a strategy, we have to have certainty, and we have to stick to it when it's challenged. And, you know, when the government says in relation to the transition for cars, it'll be this day, that'll be that day, most businesses don't say to me, oh, you know, the exact precise midnight hour is what matters to us. What they say is, once you've picked a date and you've got a strategy, stick to it, because we're already working to it. Don't then go and change it after the event. And that's why it's amongst the reasons that I want mission-driven government, this sense of a driving purpose that survives the side winds of government that very often knock governments off course. We're determined to avoid that. Thank you.
So now moving on, all of these ambitions do cost money, and so we need to hear from people who actually provide money into this economy. So Michael Moore from the British Private Equity and Venture Capital. Oh, there you are, right there in front. My goodness. Give that man a mic.
Thank you very much. May I say, Keir, that I was there in 2019, and in terms of business engagement, I think it's fair to say things have only got better, to coin a phrase. Your emphasis on partnership for growth, productivity, these are really important signals. We represent an industry with 12,000 businesses in the UK backed by private capital, 2 million jobs. 90% of the businesses are SMEs. They're all over all parts of the UK. It's a real trick to attract the international capital to the UK, to a globally competitive investment community who then deploy that capital across the UK in different areas. The key, and it's been a theme of today, I'd just like your take on it, is that there's predictability, there's consistency in the policy framework, so that on the energy transition and AI, whatever it might be, people know that when they put the money to work today, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, it's the same framework that will exist. How do you make that real?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the central issues, and this has been deep in the conversations we've had in recent years, because almost every investor across the world says to me, Keir, we've got money to invest, we're just not investing it in the UK at the moment, because we don't see the conditions as the right conditions. There's too much chopping and changing. There isn't a long-term strategy. We can't, it is, particularly for the opposition, it is politically funny to have 4 chancellors in 1 year, as we did the year before last, to have 4 budgets in 1 year. But for the economy, it's hopeless. For people looking in, wanting to invest, it's hopeless. To have a government that signs an international agreement, then pretends it's something else and tries to rip it up, isn't about sort of global Britain. That is a really bad indicator to the world about the stability of your country. So the opportunity, I hope, at the next election to reset that is hugely important, that stability. It's why Rachel is so focused on stability. I mean, many people think this is just about the sort of positioning as we go into an election. It isn't. It's about what we do the other side of the election as well, if we get that far, which is instilling that stability, making sure that the lessons we learnt the hard way under Liz Truss are never, ever repeated again in this country, creating those conditions of stability. That's why fixing the corporation rate, being absolutely clear about the fiscal rules, and the fiscal rules come first. They override, so everybody knows what the priorities are. But having a strategy where you say, this isn't the strategy for the next 12 months, it's a strategy for the next 5 years, even 10 years. And sometimes people sort of blink when I say a decade of national renewal and sort of think, well, you haven't even won one election yet. And here you are saying a decade of national renewal. But we've got to be real about the stability that we need. It's got to be measured in years, not in months. And that's why I think the sort of roots we're putting down on stability are so important, because I think that is crucial to investment, because if we want investors to come up alongside our country, we have to show the leadership, the stability, the long-sightedness, and the commitment, again, to concepts like the rule of law. We have excellent judges in this country who, through their work, underpin the contracts that you all depend on. That is a very good thing. We should be making sure that we understand properly why those things matter in this country, and I genuinely hope that if we win the election, it's a reset moment for the country, where we can make clear that stability matters for so many reasons, but not least because of the investment that I genuinely think it will attract into the country to allow the change that we need to happen at all and at a faster pace. Thank you, but it's such a central issue. I really, really appreciate the question.
So the one thread that unites everyone in this room, no matter where they come from or what they do, is technology. So your last question from the audience should come from Chloe McCune from Microsoft. Who is?
Chloe, over there.
There you are.
Sorry.
Thank you. So, like many companies here in this room, we had a good chat on our table about how to contribute in partnership to assure better economic growth. We're really hopeful in this era of AI and cloud, and wondering what your vision is, should you be fortunate enough to be in government. What's your vision, and how can you share how that cloud and AI adoption will help support that economic growth?
Well, I mean, thank you for that question, because AI is absolutely central as we go forward. And I think the first thing to make clear is my attitude, if you like, to AI, because I think people broadly fall into two camps. There's those that are fearful and want to try and put it back in its box, or those that say this is transformative and will be a real revolution that can do a huge amount of good. I'm in the second group, and therefore I want to embrace AI. I think we're in a good position in this country. We're second or third in the world. We've got Microsoft, we've got others, we've got Google, we've got incredible people here, I mean, working in technology, working on AI here in this country. So we've got a real head start. And I think that we've begun to set out the principles for regulation, or the framework, I should say, that we put around this. And it was somebody at Google who said to me with AI, Keir, think of it as like a fork. He said, you know, if you're trying to eat your dinner, a fork is quite a useful thing to have, but it can also be used to stab someone. So you don't prohibit the fork, you regulate what it's used for. And those that are at the leading edge of this, I think, are in that camp, which is let's get, and we can lead on the regulatory front, I think. We're in a position to do so. I thought it was good the Prime Minister convened a conference in the autumn of last year. I don't think we made the most of it, frankly. We would continue with that and make more of it, because I mean, there are so many examples, you all know them as well as I do, but, you know, the ability to use AI to transform the sort of detection rate for, I don't know, kidney cancer is absolutely incredible in terms of what can be done. And we're only in the foothills at the moment. So this is something we need to embrace, put a framework around it, but embrace it in the right spirit, because I think this is going to make a huge difference to all of our lives as we go forward. Certainly to my son, who's got ChatGPT on his phone already, which is very handy when he's doing his revision for his GCSEs. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Other than it's really fascinating that for him this is second nature. For him this is already part of what he's growing up with. And I think that, again, is an indication of what a change this is going to make.
So we have to wrap this up, so I'm going to throw you one last question, which I think our audience will...
We are going to step away there. Keir Starmer there answering questions from the business community, from the pharmaceutical industry, small business, property, venture capital, and also from Microsoft as well there at the end, giving answers to what he says the business world would look like if Labour got into power.